Hello, this is TG Wolff, and today's author is me. Check out my De La Cruz series, which follows Cleveland homicide detective Jesus De La Cruz as he hunts down criminals and serial killers throughout greater Cleveland. And check out my Diamond series. This 3-book series is complete and follows Diamond as she struggles to come back from suicidal tendencies over her husband's killing. It's a fun time. It doesn't sound like it, but it really is. And this is a lesson to me that I should actually write out the pre-roll and not just wing it.
And if you really want to listen to it, the first season of our podcast is the first book of TG Wolff's Diamond series. I just ask you give me some grace. That was 4 years ago when we first started. You can tell the audio quality isn't quite there yet.
We both need grace on that.
Yeah,
but the story's cool.
The story's cool, or just read it yourself. That's also cool. So thank you. Bye.
Bye. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. This is Season 7, Games People Play. Games are about competition, conducted according to rules with participants working toward a goal. Games are a part of every culture and are one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating. And as you've heard through the last 11 episodes, they can also be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detective skills. For episode 12, Tarot Cards is the featured game. This is A Tarotfying Ending by TG Wolff. Jack, you got a little carried away with our intro arpeggio there.
Maybe, possibly, just for a second there. I'm playing alto sax number 2 today. You might be wondering, well, Jack, what does alto sax number 1 sound like? Well, let me show you. And here, whoops. I forgot to turn my microphone back on. And here's number 2. Oh, darn it. Okay, got it? Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Sound like I'm at the eye doctor, which looks better. 1 or 2.
So
1 or 2.
Toe's got a more softer tonality, you know.
I do like that.
I'm a fan. I made up a word right there. I don't think tonality is a word.
I think tonality is. You're just not
I
saying the
didn't say
O.
tonality. I said tonality.
I was going to say you just didn't pronounce the O right.
I was imagining a spelling, and I spelled it wrong, and then I pronounced how I spelled it wrong. Because I was actually trying to say, what's the word? It's not tenure. That's really not it.
I really don't know. I thought you were going for tonality.
How a sound is. I think it starts with a T. Come on, I know this.
I'm sure there's people listening who are
in the middle of the story.
I think there's people out there who know what word you're trying to think, and we're probably driving them crazy as they're shouting at
timbre. It's timbre.
Not timber. Timbre.
No, it's timbre.
Okay.
It's got a little bit of a softer timbre, you know.
Okay.
Also, I love the definition of a timbre. It's pretty much just how the sound is. Anyway, all right, let's start.
I learned a new word today.
Yes, we all did. I learned betrothed. Okay, that's not true. I already knew that. I'm sorry.
The Singing Wind. Mystic Fontenot sauntered down the center of the street of the town where he'd been born, and someday, in the distant future, he was sure he would die. Bonbonnie was one of Louisiana's hidden gems. Loosely translated to the good outcast, Bonbonnie was a flashback to what New Orleans used to be before corporations launched a hostile takeover. Tucked amidst bayous that provided both protection and sustenance, the Margot sisters created a refuge here after the New Orleans mayor accused the youngest sister of killing his wife with voodoo. Voodoo priests and witches, the gifted and the touched, drifted away from or were driven out of New Orleans, and one by one, they found their way to the Margot homestead. Homes were built, businesses opened, people fell in love, and naturally, families blossomed. Mystic was a descendant of the youngest Margot sister and the wounded soldier that she had pulled out of death's clutches. Working for the parish sheriff, Mystic was the watch commander with 3 deputies and 3 civilians under him. All were Bonbonnie natives. Oh, he had other deputies from time to time, but they either left for the promise of a bigger city or because seeing meant believing. It didn't bother Mystic any. This was his place, and these were his people. This twilight patrol was his favorite part of the job. Tonight, scents of fried food and spices lingered in the still warm air. Saturday night had people filling the streets. Laughter and music were heard in equal measure. A trio of women danced. Their joy fueled the bright yellow of their combined auras. Faces and body language told a story. The colors showed Mystic the truth beneath. He stopped near the Blue Note, a century-old music club with apartments above. Steel guitar and a gritty voice spilled to the streets, lamenting the human condition. He took his hat off and gave a small bow to the owner's daughter, Cece, then smiled, and she turned away, answering a call from inside. Mystic's dark skin was leathered from too many days in the sun. His body was still lean and wiry, his long legs still covered distances easily. His pale eyes didn't see as far as they used to, but they'd always seen too much. Case in point, a pretty woman hurried up the street toward him, her long, curly hair trailing behind her. Her aura swirled with dark smoke and vivid pink, desperation and hope, a rare combination. "Mademoiselle," he said with a small bow, "do you need help?" She drew the sides of her light jacket together. A silver charm nestled in the V reflected the light of the street lamp. No, thank you. Lieutenant Pierre-Luc Fontenot. Most know me as Mystic." Mystic? For a moment, she looked like she had something to say and then changed her mind. I just need to go." He stepped out of her way. "If you change your mind, my phone number is 911. I'll come quickly." She nodded, too fast and too long. "Thank you, Lieutenant." "Only Mystic," he said. "Bonsoir, mademoiselle." "Bonsoir," she said, practically bowing, and then hurried around the side of the Blue Note. Mystic stared after her, curious what she ran from. A breeze, then a wind, wound through the buildings and trees, picking up dust, leaves, and paper. It swirled around Mystic and left to the right. A low and haunting melody floated on that breeze, seemingly following the smoke and pink woman. Continuing his patrol, Mystic walked past the tattoo parlor, a takeout gumbo shop, and a jazz hall. He turned left, walking the length of Curie Street, home to some 10 restaurants, all nicely crowded with happy patrons.
Well, folks,
Proving it's live.
I don't know what to say about that.
And somebody didn't turn his phone off.
Yeah, I'm going to pause the recording. And we're back. It wasn't my phone. It came through my computer, which is why I had to stop the recording, because the computer that I'm recording on was ringing. I can't say that normally happens. I tried to turn it off. So, cool. Thank you. And back to the show.
Continuing his patrol, Mystic walked past the tattoo parlor, a takeout gumbo shop, and a jazz hall. He turned left, walking the length of Curie Street, home to some 10 restaurants, all nicely crowded with happy patrons. He turned left on Blanche de Castel Road, which led to the town square. The large grassed area was claimed by the street artists, musicians, and vendors selling snacks and drinks from horse-drawn carriages. At the left end was La Maison Margot, where Mystic kept an apartment. At the right end was the white brick of St. Jan Francis de Chantal. In bigger cities, it would be called a church. In Bonbonnie, with its 4 spires and vaulted bell tower, it was a cathedral. Mystic's progress was slow as he was greeted by friends and acquaintances. Some shared information, others asked for it. It was the trade of the local peacekeeper. He stopped at a vendor's wagon and fed the carrot he carried to the mare. "Having a good night, Marie." "Oh, she's having a great night," the mare's owner answered. "If only every night was like this, Marie would be up to her haunches in carrots." St. Jane's bells rang out. 10 o'clock, the owner said with a grin, "and no one is going home. It's a very good night." A scream filled the short gap between the bell chimes. The gasp and the cries of the crowd answered as a woman fell from the bell tower. Her arms and legs flailed uselessly. Her body met the unforgiving ground with a sickening thud. The broken coin. Mystic hurried through the stunned crowd, pulling his radio from his belt and calling Emmanuel Cortez, his second shift deputy, ordering him to provide support. The crowd had formed a wide circle, and inside lay the victim on her stomach, arms tucked under, legs apart. 2 men knelt next to her. "Lieutenant Fontenot, Sheriff's Department," Mystic said as he approached. "Is she alive?" "No, Lieutenant." One man spoke while the other shook his head. "We're doctors, but there's nothing to be done." "Thank you, doctors. Please stay close by. We will want your statements." Mystic circled around to see the face. He let out a long, sad sigh as he recognized the smoke-and-pink woman. She wore only a sleeveless dress. Gone was the long jacket he had seen, and her feet were bare. Sirens were heard but not seen, as vehicles could not access these streets. In minutes, Emmanuel emerged from the church courtyard, his vehicle parked in the back. "Where do you want me, Mystic?" "Help me roll the body," he said. They turned the woman onto her back. She was black, somewhere between 25 and 30, well-dressed, and without a wedding ring. "I saw her not a half hour ago, Emmanuel. She was distraught." "You know her name?" Emmanuel checked for pockets. "There's no ID, no purse, no phone." "I didn't think to ask," Mystic said. "She had a long jacket on. Perhaps they were in it." "Where are her shoes?" The right side of the face had been damaged, skin and bone broken. Emmanuel leaned in. "That's odd, don't you think? The way the red lipstick is smeared across her left cheek. The fall wouldn't have done that." Make sure it's photographed." Mystic lifted the woman's hair, noting a bloody cut on the earlobe. He did the same on the other side, where a large hoop earring dangled. Next he ran his fingers around the collar, opening it wider. "What is that sticking from her dress?" Emmanuel brushed aside a pendant and lifted the edge of the dress. An ornately patterned card poked from her bra. "Tarot cards," he said. 3 of them. He held them in his palm of his hand for his watch commander's inspection. The wind gusted, snatching the cards and lifting them high out of reach. "Son of a... Don't worry, Mystic. I'll get them back." Emmanuel launched like a sprinter off the blocks. "I need you here," Mystic shouted, but Emmanuel had disappeared into the crowd. Resigned, Mystic focused on the victim. She gripped something in her hand. He uncurled the fingers, revealing half a coin charm. The chain it hung from was snapped. He fit the charm to the one the victim wore. It was a match. 2 EMTs came from the courtyard, a gurney rolling between them. "A suicide," the woman leading said. "So sad." "Sad, yes, but maybe not suicide," Mystic said. "Watch over the body." Mystic looked up to the bell tower 4 stories above his head. When Emmanuel returned, send him into the church. Planting his hands on his knees, he rose slowly, his joints creaking as he approached the steps to the church's door, which was held open by the distraught pastor, Father Amon. Mystic had welcomed the priest when he arrived some 10 years ago. Like so many residents, Amon had arrived believing he was cursed. He was afraid of who he was. Mystic showed him he belonged, both in the community and in the world. The bell tower doors are always open, Father Amon said. You know the gate is just there to keep children from wandering up alone. Many visitors climb the tower for the view. The man's aura was the color of rain clouds, heavy with sadness and regret. Did you see the woman come in? Was she alone? Mystic looked over the antechamber, his gaze sweeping along the ceiling, even though he knew there were no cameras. A woman came in as I was finishing taking the flowers down from last week's Mass, Amon said. She sat in front of the statue of Mary Magdalene. Let's look, my friend. Had you seen this woman before? Mystic entered the church, dipping his fingers in the blessed holy water, dropping to his creaky knee as he made the sign of the cross. Then he inspected each of the rows until he spotted the one with a neatly folded bundle of cloth. I didn't know her, but I could see she was upset. Amon followed Mystic up the aisle. I planned to talk to her after I had disposed of the flowers. I thought a moment to collect herself might do her good. The folded bundle was the woman's jacket. Her cell phone was in the pocket, and in the slot on the back of the phone case was her driver's license and credit card. Victoria Harris died 7 days after her 29th birthday. Father Naaman walked up the row behind. What happened to the votives? Mystic looked over his shoulder where the delicate stand holding 3 rows of small white candles was toppled and askew. Someone else had come into the church, he thought. Victoria Harris had left the pew. A conversation turned argument, turned confrontation. Why else leave her jacket? The priest looked toward the door. I need to see to the woman. I need to give her last rites. She has passed over, Father. Her death was instant. She may still be there, Ammon said. If she is, I have to help her on her way. Mystic nodded, knowing the priest saw souls the way he saw auras. Tell me if you learn anything. Emmanuel entered the church then, sweat glistening on his brow. The cards went to La Maison de l'Eau. Madame opened the door and caught them. Very good, Emmanuel. Mystic pointed to the atrium. It's time to climb the bell tower.
Again, amazing music on my part. Thank you very much. I hold your applause. Please,
Don't
please,
strain
please.
yourself, Pat. I thought you were going to do jazz.
Yeah, well, yeah, but then it was like churchy, and I was like, hold on. Remember the churchy feel I was doing in episode 10? Amazing. Wait, no, it was 9. 11? It was episode 11. Episode 11. Sorry. The numbers get mixed up. Episode 11. Because that was,
I see.
it was amazing. I loved it. Anyway, so I have a question.
I have an answer.
I don't have the question yet, but I have it.
Okay.
I take it back. I will have a question. Be prepared.
But you don't have a question right now.
Not yet. Haven't figured it out yet.
I just want to tell you that I really love the characters and the setting of the story. So I hope you enjoy it too. I'm even thinking about writing a full-length book based on it.
Mystic?
Yeah. He's somewhere between 80 and 120 years old.
I was actually going to joke that it sounded like a male stripper name, but if he's between 80 and 120, I don't need to see that. In fact, I just watched the movie Saltburn and saw more than I needed to in that.
In the last episode, you had some weird obsession with naked men on camera.
Hey, that was to prove a point, though. You know, I suppose this also wasn't to prove a point. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so Mystic is like some ambiguous, forever old, and incredibly wise person, and yet still very much wily and with it, and that's why it says like he lives in the town that he was born in, and that sometime in the far future, like he will die in. I don't know if he'll get to 130, 140, who knows? It's Mystic.
A gazillion.
It's Mystic.
He can be whatever he wants to be. It's 2024. He can live till 9090. Why did I just say that?
I don't know.
He can live I meant to say 1999, and that also doesn't make sense.
No, that's retro.
That's in the past.
That's retro.
He will live so long that we will start the universe again. You know, Jesus will come again. The calendar will restart to now and then it'll be BCA or something, ABC
BC2.
after before Christ. That's this period. It's in between the first and second coming, and then he'll be there for the second one, live until 1997 AAC after Christ, and then he'll die. So he'll be that, who knows how long that'll be.
Well, that was a long way to go.
Yeah, it was. I didn't need to do that. I just played something I was referencing, not referencing. There's the episode of Futurama where they go so far in the future that the universe ends and restarts.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was thinking about that when I said it and went, oh, that'd be cool. Anyway, let's keep going so Jack stops talking.
The Quirance Horseshoe. Mystic stood at the bottom of a circular staircase, shouting up, "Find anything, Emmanuel?" Victoria Harris didn't willingly jump, Mystic. There was a fight up here. The table with pamphlets is knocked over, the glass on a picture frame is cracked, and there's blood on it. Emmanuel's voice faded as he went deeper into the bell house. Then his head appeared at the top. I found an earring and fingernails on the ledge. She fought to stay alive. What can you hear? Mystic asked. Emmanuel held out empty hands. The bells must have been ringing. I'm getting a few words here or there. Write it down, Mystic ordered. You'll need to listen near Mary Magdalene, too. I'm going to call the department for a crime scene unit. We'll need blood samples from Miss Harris. Perhaps the blood belongs to her killer. You call Bertram, see if he can start his shift early. We need help taking statements from so many witnesses. Hopefully, someone saw who was with our victim, as the bells tolled. It was near 1 a.m. when Mystic arrived at the famed tarot parlor, Maison de l'Eau, which translated to the House of the Eye. For over 100 years, the women of the Bergeron family helped Quirance find answers to the past, present, and future. At this hour, he didn't approach the front door of the business. He was one block over, climbing the steps of the house attached to the back of the tarot parlor. Lace curtains hung across a picture window. Soft white lights said that Madame was awake. Mystic knocked. Dark, narrow eyes and pursed lips appeared in the window of the old oak door. When she recognized Mystic, her mouth curled into a mischievous grin set in a pretty face, not yet touched by time. The door opened. Good evening, Mystic. I was just making a cup of tea. Would you like one? Thank you, Madeleine. I would welcome a cup. Mystic stepped into the house that was nearly as old as Bonnie. It was comfortable, decorated with the touch of a woman who respected the past but lived in the present. How was your school year? Very good, Madeleine said, leading him into the kitchen. It's hard to believe I just have one more year of college. I can't decide if I want to go for my master's degree or join the workforce. She threw a look over her shoulder. Sit yourself down, Mystic. The water just started boiling when you knocked. She fetched another teacup and began the comforting work of pouring. You didn't come here to talk about my career plans. No, Madeleine, I did not. A woman died tonight. She fell from St. Jane's Bell Tower. She stopped mid-pour. Well, golly, that's horrible, Mystic. I take it I know her? He took the pot and finished pouring. I believe you sent the wind after her. Madeleine lost all the color in her cheeks. Victoria, she said in a trembling voice, I did a reading, and when my back was turned, she stole my tarot cards. My great-grandmother's tarot cards. I sent the wind to retrieve them. That's all. Tell me about the session. Mystic pushed a cup and saucer into her hands. What was Miss Victoria's mindset? What was the outcome of her reading? What cards did she draw? Madeleine hesitated a moment. It'll be easier to show you. Let's go into the parlor. Mystic picked up both cups and followed the fourth-generation tarot reader to a back room where Madame Lowe's wig, frock, and cane were draped on a mannequin. The costume was part of the mystique, one generation of Lowe's seers blending seamlessly into the next. Madeleine opens a safe the size of a small refrigerator, drawing a jewel-encrusted case. Sweeping back a black curtain, she led Mystic into the public side of the family business. The parlor wasn't overly large and appeared smaller for the lush decor. The latent scent of incense and dim light heightened Mystic's senses. Madeline set the case on the large round table, opened the lid, and withdrew a well-loved set of tarot cards. Mystic had seen them many times. The first time, he was a boy, and the reader was Madeline's great-grandmother. Victoria called earlier today and scheduled the reading for 8 o'clock. Madeline held the deck in one hand, using only her thumb to push them one by one into her empty hand. Every so often, she let one drop to the table. She did it all while looking at Mystic. She had a referral, but I would have seen her without it. Mama's regulars know that she's out of town, so business has been slow. Victoria gave off a frenzied kind of energy. We spoke for a few minutes. I was trying to get her to relax, and then I set the cards in front of her and asked her what questions she wanted answers to. She said the world was pressing against her and crushing her. She wanted to know how she could make it stop. Mystic set the tea down and took the chair across from Madeline. I selected the horseshoe spread for her reading, she continued. I gave her the clean deck, directed her to shuffle while she was thinking of the event she referenced. When she finished, I took the deck. Madeline collected the cards she had let fall, shuffled them, and then flipped one and set it on the table. Her past was represented by the moon, a reference to confusion or disillusionment. Victoria said she had a bad breakup less than a year ago. Her ex wasn't accepting moving on. It was one of the weights on her. Mystic had opened his small notebook. He drew a rectangle for the card and wrote moon on it, and noted the interpretation. The Lovers was placed next, positioned adjacent to the lower card, lower by half so it staggered down. This represented her present, Madeline said. Victoria smiled when she saw it and touched a charm she wore. They were going slow, she said, slow but good. Hidden influence was represented by the Four of Cups. She laughed kind of sadly when I told her it indicated that she didn't know how good she had it. Madeline placed the fourth card at the bottom of the V. Obstacles to become overcome was the Five of Pentacles, which centers on money. Fear of financial loss, destitution. She admitted her career wasn't going as she hoped and she wasn't sure what to do about it. If she went along to get along, she wasn't sure she could respect herself. I got the impression she couldn't afford to quit. What did she do for a living? Mystic asked. Judging by her clothes, she was a professional. But she was a lawyer. Something about it was painful for her. Madeline placed the fifth card, beginning up the other leg of the V, the Three of Swords, others' perspectives. Those closest to her saw her struggles. This shocked her. I sensed that she thought she was hiding it well. The best path was, she turned over the King of Wands. Mystic smiled, reaching out his hand. Hello, old friend. Madeline didn't stop him from reaching out. Mother said, this is your card. He stroked the edge as he'd done many times. I was 5 when your great-grandmother did my first reading. The King of Wands seemed to jump into my hand. That has not changed in the intervening decades. Of course not, she said. Anyway, seeing Victoria's worry and feeling her fear, I suggested she talk to you. It wasn't a case of a crime, she said. Mystic remembered the woman's face outside the music hall. It wasn't then, he said, but it may be now. The last card, the final outcome, what was it? Madeline turned the card over. The Tower, a crisis, a sudden change, an overthrow. She gasped as her eyes met Mystic's. It wasn't meant to be literal. He patted her hand. That is not for you to decide. How did she steal her cards? She was crying, Madeline said. We keep tissues in here, but Mama forgot to refill. I went into the back room for a new box, and when I came out, the moon, the Four of Cups, and the Five of Pentacles was gone. She left the Lovers? Mystic asked. Madeline nodded slowly. A knock came on the parlor door. Madeline frowned. She rose from her chair and went to the door, turning on an overhead light. Mystic followed to support her. She opened the door. Yes, can I help? Cece, is something wrong? Come in, come in. I'm looking for my girlfriend, Victoria, Cece said. I can't find her anywhere.
Bro, Victoria's dead.
The grieving lover. Cecilia Baptiste had been called Cece since she learned her ABCs. She and Madeline had been in the same high school class. While Madeline chose college, Cece went straight into the family business, the Blue Note Music Hall. Now she sat on the couch in Madeline's living room, her head cradled in the tarot reader's lap, a snowy white handkerchief clutched to her lips. Victoria was supposed to come to the Blue Note after her reading. She never showed. I went to my apartment and she wasn't there either. I called over and over, but she didn't pick up. When I heard about the woman who jumped, I just never imagined it was her. As she spoke, Mystic texted Bertram, the night shift deputy, to come to the parlor. Then he studied Cece. She was Creole. Her family moved here when her long-ago great-grandfather won a poker game, gaining his freedom and a rich man's wallet, which he used to buy a building and open the music hall. He had an unusual ear for music, something he passed to his sons and daughters. Cece wore the same black dress as he had seen her wear at the club earlier. The wide neckline plunged deep, revealing a long neck and shapely shoulders. She was in the prime of her life, and yet curled up like a small child during a storm. "How long did you know Victoria Harris?" Mystic asked gently. We just had our 4-month anniversary. She gave me a pendant. It was half a coin. Susan B. Anthony. A sob escaped. I can't find it. I'm sure I put it on my dresser, but it's gone. I'm sure it will turn up, Mystic said. I understand Victoria had troubles in her life. Cece nodded. That's why we were taking our relationship slow. Her last girlfriend, Keisha, did a number on her head. Victoria filed a restraining order against her, not that it did any good. Then there was her sister, Angela. She was pressuring Victoria to sell the house they grew up in. Some real estate agent convinced her the house was worth over $1 million. Money grab is all she's in for. Mystic wrote quickly, asking for details on names. She also had problems at work, correct? She's a junior lawyer in a prestigious law firm, Cece said, but the woman she works under is the kind who rather tear a woman down instead of building them back up. There's something more than a power trip going on, but I don't know what. Victoria was very close-lipped about it. When did you see her last? Mystic asked. Did you hear anything unusual happen since? I left my apartment around 6 when I went to work. Cece pushed up to sitting, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She came down and, a woman talked to her at the bar. She had an ugly look on her face and Victoria was shaking her head. The woman was middle-aged in a tight white dress. She was blonde. She left quickly and I went to Victoria. She blew it off. Then she gave me a kiss and left for Madame Lowell's. The front door to Madeline's home opened and Bertram poked his head in. Mystic? I saw the light on. Come in, Bertram, come in, he said. Miss Madeline, Miss Cece? Bertram nodded to the ladies in greeting. What can I do to help? Escort Cece to her apartment, Bertram. Mystic leaned toward the grieving lover. Will you let Bertram search the apartment? Maybe Victoria has left something behind that makes sense of all of this. Anything to help, Cece said tearfully. Did Miss Victoria wear lipstick tonight? Mystic asked the two women. A dark red? It was pink, Madeline said immediately. Rose petal pink. That's right, Cece said. I wear the darker red for work. Mystic began Sunday in the storefront that was the sheriff's office. Fighting and public disorderlies were statistically the most common crimes in Bombini. Theft wasn't far down the list. Deaths were not uncommon in Bombini. It seemed people were drawn to the town in their final days, even those who had never visited before. No, death was not uncommon, but murder was. Emmanuel Cortez shook his copy of the paper he'd added to the case folders. Hey, you all, as you see from my transcript, Victoria Harris was arguing with someone before she fell. I clearly heard her say, Be reasonable, this isn't going to make things better. The tolling of the bells overwhelmed most of what both people said. Did you hear anything in the church itself? Mystic asked. Yes, but there were no names, he said. The conversation was limited to things like, what are you doing here? And I can be anywhere I want to be. When the votive stand went down, one of the metal legs twisted free, creating a sharp, jagged edge. A blood sample was collected from it and is being analyzed. Very good, Mystic said. Our preliminary review of the body did not find cuts or wounds inconsistent with the fall. Alert the medical examiner to double check, but I'm hopeful the blood will be our killer's. Then you agree she was killed? Emmanuel asked. It was not suicide? Mystic thought, I don't know how or why Victoria Harris died last night, but I am certain it was not because she climbed the stairs to the bell tower, intending to end her life. I found her shoes, Bertram said. They were in the confessional at the other end of the hallway. They were set in the corner, not kicked off or tossed in. My guess is our victim hid in there and took her shoes off before she left, so as not to make a sound on the marble floor. There's some sense to that, Marguerite, the day shift deputy said. Heels like hers would echo. Without other noise to mask it, her steps would have sounded like shots. What I don't understand is why she didn't leave. She had to walk past the front doors to get from the confessional to the bell tower. The easiest answer, Mystic said, was that she couldn't. If she hid in the confessional, as Bertram suggests, then while her assailant couldn't see her, she also couldn't see her assailant. Perhaps she thought the tower a better hiding place. Perhaps she was found and forced into it. It matters not to our curiosity, but not to the crime. Did we learn anything from the witnesses? A little, Bertram said. A woman was taking pictures of St. Jane's shortly before the victim fell. They included people who were out front. She emailed the images to me. They are printed in your folders. Take a look at the top one. In the lower left is a figure in black. Well, she's not out for a night on the town, Marguerite observed. She, Emmanuel asked, what makes you think it's female? The sweatshirt is too bulky to tell anything. But the pants aren't, Marguerite said. Look at the curves of the thigh and the butt. Those are female curves. Fit female curves. She's not short, judging on the height of the others around her. A few thought they saw someone in the bell tower, Bertram said, but none could give descriptions. I did search C.C. Baptiste's apartment. Someone had broken in and tried to be cute about it, but scratches on the lock gave away the forced entry. A few personal items were out of place, like the framed picture of Victoria and C.C. In the bedroom, there was a smiley face drawn in red lipstick on the dressing table mirror. C.C. assumed Victoria did it when she first found it. There's a good chance the suspect rummaged through Victoria's weekend bag. C.C. couldn't tell if anything was missing. Victoria's briefcase was sitting next to the weekend bag and it didn't look touched. I escorted C.C. to her father's house for the night and took Victoria's briefcase and the lipstick as evidence. I ordered the apartment to be printed and photographed. Do you have a picture of this face? Mystic examined the image on Bertram's phone, comparing it to the color photo of the victim lying on the table. Look at this. The color on the victim's lips and the color across her cheek are not the same. Marguerite, as the only female, was expected to be an expert in everything feminine. Not even close, she confirmed. She's wearing pink. The smear looks like, well, it looks like she turned her head while someone was kissing her. Somebody of approximately the same height, otherwise the smear wouldn't be so straight across. The victim was 5'8" based on her driver's license, Emmanuel said. And, if it happened in the bell tower, she was barefoot. So we are looking for somebody approximately 5'7" to 5'9" who wears red lipstick. On a Saturday night in Bonbonnie, that isn't a small number of people. Good work so far. Bertram, go home and get some sleep. Marguerite, pay a visit to the lover, C.C. Baptiste. It was her charm that Victoria clutched as she fell. The question is, how did Victoria get it? On it, Mystic. Is C.C. a suspect? Marguerite asked. She's a little thing, 5'4" at most. No, Cece didn't kill her girlfriend. Her grief was real and deep. Mystic looked back at the lip colors. But she may know something that could help us. Emmanuel, we may have some results from Lafayette by the time your shift starts. If I'm not back, review them and feed me the information. What about Madame Lowe? Bertram asked. Her wind could have pulled the woman to her death. Yes, it's possible, Mystic acknowledged. But the wind would not have put the charm in her hand. For now, I'm going to follow the cards and see what fortune they bring us.
Sup? Break time, baby. I hope you like these breaks, audience, because they're fun for me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, last season and even earlier this season, we should just do them continuous. And we started taking breaks during episode 6, and we found that we liked them. And Jack apparently has ideas while he's playing.
I think a lot. I have nothing better to do but think. And I'm a lot better at thinking now. If you listen to some of the earlier episodes, you'll see me either... get to the end of them and I'll be like, I have no idea. I don't remember a single character. I don't remember a single thing that's happened. It's not because the story was bad. It's because I could not pay attention. But then I learned to pay attention. And now I've learned to pay attention and to play piano and have a third thought.
I will say 2 things. The last 2 episodes, you practically remembered all the characters' names.
Exactly. I won't be able to do it for this episode because the names are too unique.
Oh, I was going to say, because in previous you're like all white names.
Yeah, I can really do it when it's like Tanner and Skylar went to the barber shop last Tuesday night. It's harder when it's Mystic and
Bertram.
Victoria died. Bertram I can remember because there's one character I thought was funny named Bertram in something.
Okay.
I don't remember.
But I will say, like, you're playing the piano, you're listening to me, and yet your mind is still wandering.
Well, sometimes there'll be a chapter and you'll get to it and I'll just be like, this is filler. I'm not paying attention to it. And then I'll start daydreaming of something else. And then we'll get to the end. And I don't think, audience, you realize how much I bank on the deliberation. I could not do this. I would be like 0 for 300 if I didn't have the deliberation. I miss so many details in my daydreaming and in just not being able to pay attention. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's important and what isn't, and you'll see me do that. That's how I find plot holes, is I think something's important, and we get to the end, and I'm like, well, it didn't play a part. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, I guess that was supposed to mean something, but I'm not paying enough attention to realize it didn't mean anything. So now I'm clinging to the one part that doesn't actually matter, and I ignore the rest of the story. And that's how I get so backwater flipped. I don't know why I said backwater, backwards.
The deliberations are really challenging to write because I do want to bring all the suspects forward, with something that helps people remember them, and then to outline the clues. But I'm not trying to undo all the good work that the authors did with creating a mystery. And there's been times that you've gamed it based on the way I word stuff.
I was just thinking that. I was like, you've asked me a question. Now, I'll be honest, the times that I remember there one time in specific, I don't remember which episode, I had a question and you refused to answer it.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And I got it wrong because you refused to answer it. And I was like, darn it, that should have meant something. I didn't pay attention.
Well, and there was another time where I said there was something in my word choice and you're like, wait, you said it doesn't appear so, which means that it really is. And you were right. Like I had said that. I was like, you
it's like when you say
me.
Allegedly. It's like, that means yes. Allegedly just means legally, no. But actually, yes.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, it's something to watch out for. And you've gotten much better at not letting me fake game the whole thing from your wording. But sometimes when we talk later and you bounce it off with me, it doesn't help that you know who did it. So you're trying to come up with ideas about who did it. And at the same time, not reveal that you know who did it and not reveal to me who did it. So then sometimes you will just eliminate a character and be like, no, it's obviously not them, Jack. Stop getting obsessed over the taco bar manager. What's
funny is for this season, we're doing a whole year. So all 26 episodes. So it's prepping a lot. I don't remember a lot who did these because I worked with the author and edited these stories now 6 or 8 weeks ago, and I've done 11 stories since. And so it's kind of funny too, as we get to the deliberation, you say something and I'm like, I really don't remember who did it.
And that's
I'm playing right along with you.
I love that. And that happens a lot. Like I keep going back to the episode, I forget which number it is. I can't remember numbers, with Lindsay and Chad and Jeff.
Oh, that was the headbands
episode.
Yeah.
And I made fun of it a little for having just basic white names, but I don't think if I read it like you did and went back to it, I can remember who a single person was and what they did. If you made me read it right now, I might forget who killed them because I just don't remember the characters' names.
Yeah.
But in the moment, yes, I could keep everybody aligned and in track, and I could tell who did what.
Yeah, that was awesome when you remembered every character.
When people make unique names, yes, I can go back to it and say Allegra did it. I know Allegra did it. That was 4 seasons ago, and Allegra did it. Okay? I could tell you that. I couldn't tell you who did the first episode. I don't remember what the first episode was. It was the Pharaoh cheat.
The Pharaoh cheat.
I don't remember the names of the characters.
Oh, I don't remember.
I remember what I imagined the character looked like.
Mm.
I remember what I imagined the character who killed him looked like. I don't remember any of the names.
Yeah.
Because that was actually only a week ago that we recorded it. So it wasn't actually that. Actually,
That was pretty good.
Like 3 weeks ago.
We should get back to this story before people forget.
You're right. I'm sorry. All right. Who does Mystic kill?
Mystic doesn't kill anybody. He's the good guy. The cup overfloweth. Mystic checked his phone, nearly 10 in the morning, and rang the bell of the upscale apartment belonging to Angela Harris, Victoria's sister. "Who is it?" a female voice called out. "Lieutenant Pierre-Luc Fontenot, Sheriff's Department. Miss Angela Harris?" "Sheriff," she echoed. "Give me a minute. I'm not dressed." Mystic turned his back to the door, surveying the courtyard formed by 3 wings of apartments. The landscaping rivaled those in New Orleans' Garden District, with bubbling fountains, flowers exploding with color, and statues of nymphs and cherubs abound. The door opened. He turned to a woman with the same features as the victim. She was older than her sister, closer to 40, with a full, curvy figure. She dressed in black pants and wore a white silk shirt. Her hair was pinned up, and a thick gold chain bridged the gap at her throat. She wore pale lipstick and had darkened her eyes. Her aura was pink, practically neon. This was a woman who needed attention. She leaned on the door, one arm behind it. "Lieutenant, it's rather early on a Sunday morning. What can I do for you?" "May I come in?" he asked. "This isn't for neighbors." "I suppose. Sure." She backed then, admitting him into her living room. It was dressed as she was, neat and stylish, crisp and attractive. "I haven't started coffee yet." Mystic shook away the demands of politeness. "No need. I've come to talk to you about your sister, Victoria." He watched her closely. "I'm sorry to tell you, she died last night." She what?" The woman spun away and began pacing. "Are you certain you have the right person? My sister, Victoria Harris? The uppity goody two-shoes lawyer?" "We are certain it is your sister," he said, and he outlined her death. "When did you see her last?" Angela dropped her head back, still pacing. "Oh God, it's been months. But I talked to her Thursday. We have an offer on our father's house. We're half-sisters. She's 10 years younger, but Dad made her the executrix. Just because she's a lawyer doesn't mean she should get a say over my father's estate." "You both own the house now?" Mystic asked. "Yes, we own it 50-50, which makes it worthless to me, unless we sell it." She stopped in her tracks. "It's mine now. Isn't that right?" Mystic shook his head. "I'm not a lawyer. I would think it depends on Victoria's will." She spun away, whispering to herself, "A will. Why didn't I think of that?" "Miss Harris, where were you last night, between 7 and midnight?" "Home," she said. "I work at a car dealership as a loan agent. I was there until 6. I was supposed to have a date, but he canceled. He's in real estate and an emergency came up." Mystic took notes. "This date, is he the same man who brokered the offer on the house?" Her expression darkened. Selling is a good business decision. Victoria works all those hours to make her billing goals, and she has nothing meaningful to show for it. She has a bleak, empty life. She is not in total shock she killed herself. Still, with Tori and Dad gone, I guess I'm alone. As Angela spoke, she turned over her hands, revealing a bandage on her palm. Mystic pointed to it. You have a cut. She rolled her eyes. I decided to make guacamole to go with margaritas last night. The knife slipped when I was trying to get the pit out of the avocado. All that work and Byron cancels. I'll need Byron's contact information, Mystic said. Why? Confusion was quickly replaced with shock. You think I did not kill my sister. I wanted her to take the offer on the house. That was it. We would have both benefited. And now, Mystic said, maybe only you benefit. How much is this offer? Angela paled, pressing her hand to her throat. $1.7 million. Back in his car, Mystic sat for a moment, considering the case. The tarot card reading was thought to be a parlor game by some and a strict fortune-telling of the future by others. The first Madame Lowe, Marie Blanche Bergeron, was as touched as many are who find their way to Bombini, but she was also a performance artist. She became what her clients needed to separate with their dollars: entertainer, advisor, coach, fortune teller. The science and the art she passed on to her daughter and her daughter and her daughter, Madeline. The horseshoe Madeline dealt had meaning. Revisiting in his notes, Mystic noted the position of the cards that were stolen. He was confident that Angela was the Four of Cups, the hidden influence who worked behind the scenes to move her sister. While it was often assumed that the actions were meant to benefit the querent, Mystic had seen too much reality to buy the one-sided approach. The Four of Cups signified discontent with life. Discontent could turn into carelessness, apathy, or depression. For half of $1 million+ estate, it could also turn to murder. The Pentacle Cuts. Noon had Mystic ringing the bell on a spacious home in a high-end Lafayette neighborhood. 3 stories with a balcony and a turret, the house was stately and very well kept. He stood on the wide, long front porch, appreciating the flowers spilling out from boxes mounted to the railings. Yes, a man's voice said. Can I help you? Mystic turned to the middle-aged man with a New England accent. I am Lieutenant Pierre-Luc Fontenot with the Sheriff's Department. Is Grace Anderson home? He narrowed his eyes as if to protest, then turned into the house. Grace? A sheriff is here for you. For me? The woman's voice was far away. Footsteps quickened, coming toward him. Hello? I'm Grace Anderson. The woman was in her 50s, with an accent that said she was born and raised in Louisiana. She was blonde, with hair bobbed at her jawline. She was of average height, with the extra pounds that came with a desk job. Her expression was controlled elegance, with an undertone of rage. Her aura was the same. Yellow of fear, swirled in with the mix of purple and black Mystic had come to know as arrogance. Mystic bowed his head. Victoria Harris works for you, correct? Yes, she said. She works in mergers and acquisitions under me. Has something happened? Yes, Mrs. Anderson, something has happened. May I come in? Once inside the house, Mystic told her of Victoria's death, allowing the implication of suicide. I just can't believe it. Grace Anderson sank into the Queen Anne-styled couch, her hand clutching her husband's. I just saw her on Friday. She was looking forward to a weekend getaway. She was going to Bombini, I believe. How is her emotional state? He asked. Did she seem stressed or maybe worried about something? Of course she was stressed, Lieutenant. We're in the middle of very tense negotiations on behalf of one of our best clients. She was working 16-hour days. We both were. Our seller is in Germany, which means our days start early. Mystic had his notebook open and was taking notes. Were the hours the sole source of the stress? Was there any strain between the two of you? Grace looked away, her gaze drifting to the front windows. Well, the work wasn't easy, and intensity is difficult to sustain. We did have a disagreement, but I assure you it was nothing but steam blowing off. Victoria majored in accounting in college and considered herself something of an expert. She lowered her head, much as a bull might before it charged. She was too young to know what she didn't know. With the decades Mystic had under his belt, he understood the sentiment. He also knew youth and inexperience were not the same as being wrong. Were you in Bonbonnie last? When were you in Bonbonnie last? Last night, Grace said. My husband and I had dinner at La Bonne Poisson. Mystic raised his eyebrows. You must have made the reservation some time ago. The restaurant was reservations only for all except Bonbonnie residents. The Andersons would not have been able to walk in. Well, I made the reservation 2 months ago, her husband said. It was our wedding anniversary. Thank you, sir, Mystic said. Tell me about your evening. Mrs. Anderson looked up at her husband. Well, we arrived at the restaurant about 20 minutes to 8. We sat at the bar and had drinks. There was a jazz singer performing an early set. Keisha Darling. Such an unusual name, Darling. Our table was ready just as she finished and the band was breaking down. We had a leisurely meal. It was after 9 when we paid the check. It was a lovely night, so we walked. She gasped. We walked around the square in front of the church. You said she fell from the church tower? Was that? He nodded. Did you see Victoria Harris that evening? No, she said. Victoria talked about the music hall. When we went past it, I did have the thought to go in and see if she was there. I decided against it. Instead, we walked and then returned to our car. We were home shortly after 10. Mystic detected a lie in the statement. Would Victoria had welcomed you if you had gone into the music hall? Her expression fell into a deep frown. Likely not. The argument we had over the deal was Friday afternoon. Madame, I must ask you to think about everything you have told me. This is a murder investigation. Murder, she exclaimed. You said she committed suicide. You inferred, Mystic said. You went to the Blue Note before your dinner. I have a witness who can place you there. Grace waved him off and stood. Fine, I went to that rat's den of a music hall. I had the final word in our conversation. She was alive and well when I left. Remorseless, her shocked expression vanished. Mystic saw white sparks of outrage radiating through her aura. Was this argument, this conversation, about work? What so infuriated you that you sought out your subordinate during your anniversary dinner? That, she spat, is none of your business. Her face contorted the carefully applied effects of beauty into an unpleasant mask, matching Cece's description of the woman at the club. If I wanted to get rid of Victoria, I would have fired her, not murdered her. Look for your killer somewhere else. Mystic turned his attention to her husband. Your wife wasn't with you the whole night. Mr. Anderson looked confused by the turn of events. Our reservation was for 8. I dropped Grace off as close to the restaurant as I could and then went to park. It was a busy night and traffic was horrendous. When I finally made it to the restaurant, Grace was waiting for me in front. We walked in at 20 minutes to 8, I'm certain of that. We were together the rest of the night, except for just before 10 when I went to get the car. But it couldn't have taken more than 10 minutes. We were home by 10:30. I need to get into Victoria's apartment, Grace said, pacing with agitation. I need her briefcase. Any papers she had are privileged and confidential, and I will not have the police sinking my deal. I demand access immediately. Mystic did not grant the request, but he did make note to have the files in the briefcase Bertram seized as evidence reviewed by a trusted attorney. He then took several different approaches to questioning his suspects, but came away with nothing more than an angry woman with gaps in time. The timetable was tight, but not impossible. In his car, he again studied the sketch of the tarot card deal, looking for the place where Grace Anderson belonged. The Five of Pentacles had landed in the lowest position of Victoria Harris's horseshoe spread. The position represented an obstacle preventing Victoria from living her best life. The card reflected issues of financial worries, destitutions, failure, and shame. From the information provided by Cece Baptiste, Victoria's salary provided her with the comforts that most would be envious of. Living within her means, she did not have the pressures represented by the card. Yet, it was an obstacle. Or, Grace Anderson was the obstacle. The moon hides. Victoria Harris did indeed have a restraining order against her ex, Keisha Brown. It was filed 6 months ago after a confrontation at Victoria's workplace, where no less than 5 attorneys saw Keisha shove Victoria and threatened to do more. Mystic's last suspect lived across the river from Bonbonnie. The apartment complex was older but well maintained. It was a place for young couples to start out and older couples to downsize into. Now 2 in the afternoon, Mystic knocked on the ground floor door. The red door was flung open by a 20-something woman with a large afro, wearing a blue kimono, a purple and red silk scarf around her neck, and black slippers. "You aren't Mr. Ling's usual delivery man." The woman's aura was a dynamic blend of orange and green, hopes and fears, confidence and anxiety. "No, I am not." Mystic showed his badge and introduced himself. "I understand you know Victoria Harris. May I come in?" Inside, the home reflected the woman. It was crowded with memorabilia and self-help books, items of indulgence and cheap imitations. "What do you want?" she asked, adjusting the scarf more fully around her neck. "I bring bad news," he said. "Victoria Harris died last night." "What? No," she cried, spinning away, shoulders hunched in. "How?" "She fell from a bell tower." Mystic watched the colors of her auras change. She couldn't seem to decide who she was. "Tell me the Victoria you knew." Keisha turned back, her arms wrapped tightly across her stomach. Victoria was the kind of woman that people watched when she crossed a room, but she didn't know it. She was smart and funny and had a silly side. She was a hard worker, sometimes too hard. She paused a moment before adding, "I loved her." Mystic heard and saw the statement to be true, but he also saw something from under the sleeve of the kimono, noticeable for the white against dark skin. "There was a restraining order," he said. "What led to it?" Keisha frowned. "What does this have to do with Victoria jumping off a bell tower? She suicided." Mystic noted her words but only shrugged. These questions must be asked. She backed away, not physically as much as emotionally. "I wanted to move in together. Victoria wanted to take a break. I felt desperate and, well, I pushed her. Those lawyers she worked with convinced her to take out the order. It didn't matter, though. We were working through it." "She was in a relationship," Mystic said. "That must have made you angry." Keisha shook her head. "It made me sad. I understood that this was her rebound chick. She was seeing that what we had was special. She was working her way back to me." The logic was delusional at best. He was about to push on the subject when a poster on the wall caught his attention. "Keisha Darling?" She followed Mystic's gaze to a framed photo of her with a jazz quartet. "It's my stage name. More memorable than Brown, don't you think? I work as a personal trainer during the day and I sing at night, but not for long. I'm releasing an album next month and then touring after." "You were in Bonbonnie last night," Mystic said, piecing together that Keisha Brown was the singer Grace Anderson and her husband had heard. "Yes, I was," she said, twirling the end of her scarf. "I played a gig at Le Bon Poisson. Soon, bookings like that won't be able to afford me, but I did get a chance to play some of my new songs. The audience loved them, of course." He pointed to the bandage. "How was your arm cut?" he asked, intentionally leading the question. Keisha pulled the sleeve down and held it in place. "I brushed against something while I was loading my gear into my car. behind the restaurant. It's not bad. I'm just worried about infection, you know? I can imagine. Mystic finished his note as he looked up at her. What time did you leave the restaurant? Oh, I'm not sure. Keisha puffed out her cheeks as she thought. I didn't keep track of time. I was wiped out and came straight home after my set. Maybe 10:30? Why do you ask? To be honest with you, Miss Brown, we think someone forced Miss Victoria out that window. She gasped. You're saying she was murdered? By who? Mystic closed his notebook. That's my question. You knew her very well. Who could have wanted to harm Victoria? Keisha toyed again with the scarf. Her half-sister Angela. She hated Victoria because she was their father's favorite. Angela slapped her at their father's funeral when Victoria wouldn't talk about putting the house on the market. I even tried talking to Angela, but it was a waste of breath. Jealousy and family do not mix, Lieutenant. Do you know who Miss Victoria was dating? He asked. Who was her rebound chick? Some cello-playing hoe named Cece. Keisha pointed a finger at Mystic. I bet Victoria told her that we were getting back together and she pushed her out the window. Mr. Ling's delivery man arrived as Mystic made his exit. In his car, he wrote Keisha's name in the position of the last stolen card. The moon was the first card Madeline had dealt. It represented Victoria's past. Good or bad, right or wrong, the card showed something that the querent moved through to get to where she was now. The moon is associated with night, but more, it's associated with deepest fears. Was Keisha Brown who Victoria feared?
Who knows? Let's find out next time on Whose Line Is It Anyway? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to find out right now. Right now. And I say that I don't know yet.
Well,
I need the facts.
Well, before I give you the facts, I'm going to remind people that we are ad-free. And in exchange for, being ad-free, we're asking you to support our authors. This week it is me. Check out my website. Google me on, Google or Amazon. Check out my backlist and pick up a title. I would certainly appreciate it and would also appreciate any reviews. It really does matter as new readers look for authors to try out. All right. So, not a shocker, Victoria Harris did not jump from the bell tower, but who helped her?
Who?
Mystic and his talented squad are collecting the evidence and checking alibis as we speak. But in whose direction should Mystic focus his considerable talents? Here's the suspects in the order we met them. Okay. Angela Harris.
Yes.
Victoria's older half-sister who wanted to sell their father's valuable estate.
She has a cut on her hand.
She does have a cut on her hand of $1.7 million that she doesn't have to share anymore.
Yes. Hopefully she did it.
Grace Anderson, Victoria's boss who is making her professional life hell.
She doesn't have a cut on her hand.
She does not have a cut on her hand, but she was in Bonbonnie.
It wasn't her.
Keisha Brown, a.k.a. Darling, Victoria's ex, who still wanted to make it work.
Yes.
Well, okay, so here are the clues. Victoria Harris was confronted by someone in St. Jane Francis Church. She apparently hid in the confessional, taking off her shoes, and ended up in the bell tower 4 stories above the square.
Indeed.
A physical altercation took place, and Victoria Harris was thrown from the bell tower. Victoria's torn fingernails and an earring were found in the tower.
Indeed.
It just makes me cringe thinking about ripping an earring out.
That's so gross.
When found, Victoria had the chain and charm in her hand that she'd given her girlfriend Cece on their anniversary.
Indeed.
Victoria also had lipstick smeared on her cheek that matched the lipstick used to draw on the mirror in Cece's apartment.
Interesting.
She also had 3 tarot cards tucked in her bra.
Okay.
Angela Harris acknowledged arguing with her sister over their father's estate. She says she was home at the time of the death with no witnesses. She had a cut on her hand sustained when making guacamole for a date who no-showed. No other cuts or scratches were noticed.
Interesting.
Grace Anderson acknowledged arguing with Victoria over the deal they were working on. Grace was in Bonbonnie and went to see Victoria at the club. She does not have an alibi for the time her husband went to get the car shortly before 10. No cuts or scratches were noticed. Keisha Darling Brown was a singer and personal trainer who was convinced she and Victoria were getting back together. Okay. She had a cut on her arm sustained the night before loading her gear. Her clothes and scarf did not provide the opportunity to see any additional injuries.
Interesting.
So, who would you arrest for this dirty deed done in a holy place?
Okay, we gotta look at the facts here.
We gotta look at the facts.
Now, I don't think it's Grace Anderson. For one reason, ain't no cut on her hand.
Okay.
I don't think it's her. And then you gotta turn to the next two. And personally, I don't know. I'm just going on a feel here. While one person seems more malicious, that being Angela, I feel like her reason of money is a dumb reason to kill. Granted, people have killed for a lot less money than that. So, and in real life too. So, it could be her. However, this doesn't feel like the common kind of investigation that would kill over money, kill over greed, you know?
Yeah.
It's very touchy-feely, you know? And it feels like it needs a touchy-feely murderer.
Okay.
Which would be Keisha. Now, Keisha could easily have done it. But it seems like too much points to Keisha. I'm gaming it, I know. But it seems like too much points to Keisha. Like they want it to be Keisha. Like the author was like, hey, Jack, look at this. It's going to be Keisha. But then, you know what you're going to do? You're going to make it Keisha. Because you're going to notice that I noticed that it's Keisha. And be like, know what, Jack? No, the evidence is right. I wasn't joking. So
are you gaming or ungaming?
I think I'm doing both. I'm going to game it and then ungame it and then regame it based on your reaction to my gaming and ungaming.
And your answer is?
I don't want to go with Keisha, but it feels like Keisha is the best option because I know there's evidence somewhere that would prove who did it. And maybe if I paid more attention to the not paid attention. Sometimes I swear words just go in one ear and out the other. You know? I have a feeling the tarot cards mean something. I don't know. Couldn't remember if I tried. So what do you think, audience? Did the tarot cards mean something? I hope you could hear more than I could. Besides, y'all aren't playing piano. Probably driving or sitting next to a warm fire. Well, wait. I guess it'd be outside. Yeah, you could sit next to an outside fire because it's not winter anymore. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Keisha, and when I'm wrong, it's your fault, not mine.
Okay, so
it's your fault. You gamed
Jack is finally locked in on Keisha after much rambling thinking. So listening audience, listening detectives, I hope you have locked in on your suspect, and we will roll into the big reveal. Mystic knew who did it, but his knowledge wasn't admissible in court, even in Bombini. It had taken all of his deputies working together to find the evidence to apply for the arrest warrant. Still, it was more circumstantial than the prosecutor liked. Mystic's job now was to get the confession. The three women who were suspected of the murder sat in the front row at St. Jane Francis Church. Grace Anderson held her head high as she sat. She was rigid, haughty, yet bracing for a blow. Her husband sat behind her wearing a similar expression. Angela Harris swallowed compulsively. She looked back and forth anywhere but at Mystic. Behind her sat a man who was thought to be an attorney and discovered to be a real estate agent. Keisha Brown sat with a small smile on her lips. She was defiant as she played with the tasseled end of yet another scarf. No one sat behind her. Bertram and Emmanuel were posted in the aisles on either side. Marguerite and Father Amon were solemnly on either side of Mystic. The two key witnesses sat in the front row across the aisle. Madeleine Bergeron clutched her grandmother's hand, and Cece Baptiste cried silently, her father's arm around her shoulder. "Thank you for coming," Mystic began in a quiet, respectful voice. "We are here to get to the bottom of the murder of Victoria Harris." Grace Anderson raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. A bit dramatic, don't you think? Murder is dramatic, Mystic said. Victoria did not leap to her death. She was pushed, falling to her death, holding her lover's charm, wearing her lover's lipstick. I didn't kill Victoria, Cece cried out. If I didn't want to be with her, I would have broken it off, not killed her. You can read me, Mystic. You can hear me, Marguerite. I was falling in love with her. It was a horribly kept town secret that Marguerite heard lies. Emmanuel could hear conversations hours old, but Marguerite was highly empathetic. I couldn't say that word, empathetic, and able to discern fact from fiction. I know you were. Mystic slid his gaze slowly down the line, stopping on Madeline. I didn't, Mystic. She squeezed her grandmother's hands. I asked only for the return of the cards that had been in my family for 100 years. And if the wind brought the woman with the cards? Mystic let the thought trail. Angela Harris leaned forward, confusion wrinkling her brow. What do you mean the wind went after the cards? That's not possible. Mystic had made his point, and it was one Madeline would not forget. You were home alone, Miss Harris. Your Mr. Byron confirmed he canceled your date at 6:30. Plenty of time for you to drive to Bombini. Angela paled as she looked into the accusing faces. But I didn't. I didn't, Lieutenant. I just wanted her to sell the house. It would have made us both rich. Mystic glanced at Marguerite, who nodded. The sister you could have had was worth far more than the price of a house. His gaze moved down the pew. You, Mrs. Anderson, you had reason to want Victoria dead. Do you care to guess what we found in Victoria's briefcase? Grace's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward in the pew. Everything about that deal is strictly legal, she fired back. And that is not the point of this interrogation. I was not with Victoria when she was killed, and you can't prove I was, because I wasn't. Mystic nodded. You were seated in Le Bon Poisson just after Keisha Darling Brown broke down her set. Yes, Grace said. It was 8 o'clock, the time of our reservation. Maybe a few minutes after. Keisha leaned back as all eyes went to her. 8 o'clock, Miss Darling Brown, Mystic said. Victoria was with me then, Madeline said. I was at the Blue Note, Cece said. I was at home, Angela said, alone. Keisha flipped the end of her scarf compulsively. It wasn't the end of the set. We were just taking a break. Mystic shook his head. You, Miss Keisha, were in the apartment. It was Cece's turn to gasp. You touched my things. You took my charm and you drew with my lipstick? She wore your charm and your lipstick, Mystic said. She attempted to kiss Victoria, who fought back. Keisha, remove your scarf. Keisha froze. No, I won't strip. You can't make me. Hiding the truth doesn't stop it from existing, Mystic said. The scarf covers the marks the chain made when Victoria snapped it from your neck. Tell us what happened, Keisha. You wanted Victoria back. Did she discover you in the apartment? Bertram and Emmanuel moved closer, the other women farther away. Keisha stood but was trapped with Mystic standing in front of her. I was outside the apartment, on the back landing when Victoria came around the side of the building. She ran when she saw me. I nearly lost her. Then I saw her go into the church, and I followed. I just wanted to talk. She pushed me into the candles. I fell down, and when I got up, she was gone. I ran out to the front steps and looked for her in the crowd, and then I heard something behind me. The door to the bell tower was closing. I ran up the stairs and I found her in the tower. I told her we needed to move on. She shoved me into the table. Keisha tensed her hands into curling fists. I kissed her and we ended up in a fight. She said she didn't love me, that it was over, that she loved Cece. With every word, her face tightened, her eyes narrowed, her lips thinned. Bitterness took control, ravaging the woman of her beauty. But I had the last laugh when I pushed her out the window. No! Cece threw her head back, her anguished cries soaring to the arched ceiling. How could you? How? Keisha looked down her nose at the grieving lover. If I couldn't have her, no one could. Then the woman who planned to take the world by storm raised her chin defiantly. I have no regrets. Mystic read the pain emanating from everyone else in the church. No eyes were dry as hearts and hopes were broken. That is the saddest truth of the affair. Emmanuel, Bertram, take her away. The end.
I was right. Suck it. That's right. I gamed it till I won.
You gamed it till you ungamed it till you're like, she actually laid out the facts. Maybe I should believe them.
No. You forget. I don't remember the facts. That's right. I'm too good for the facts. I'm too good to remember the facts.
So one of the clues was, and I don't know if I captured in the deliberation fully, but Keisha kept wearing those scarves because she had the scratches on
I heard
her
that
neck.
and I went, well, I remember someone else was too covered up to
no,
be.
she was the only one who was covered up. Everybody else had bare
Okay,
necks.
it did say that she was too covered up to see any other marks. And I just went, who cares? Whatever. They all were.
I'll just ignore the one that matters the
Here's
most.
the thing is my literal thought was, well, yeah, aren't all of them wearing clothes?
Clothes, but not scarves wrapped around their neck.
Yeah, well, it didn't mention scarf. It just said covered up, and I went, whatever. Well, I won.
Did you enjoy the story?
I did enjoy the story. I have to say, the fact that Mystic is 80 to 120 and drives a car is terrifying.
He didn't say he drove a car.
It did. He said Mystic went out to his car.
Oh, you're right. You're right. He did drive, yeah. He does
drives. My 97-year-old grandfather was driving as of about a month ago. Terrifying. Actually, no, I guess he stopped. Either way, he was still like...
Yeah, but Mystic is Mystic.
Yeah, Mystic apparently isn't senile, and it's quite entertaining in my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You want to learn about tarot cards?
I would love to learn about this game you chose. Wait a second. Hold on a minute.
Uh-oh.
Wait a second.
Can I go run and hide in a podcast
No.
corner?
This is games we play, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Games people play.
I have a question. When you were a child and the teachers were like, all right, go outside and play a game, did you whip out your tarot cards and predict people's death? Was that a game? Is that a happy go? Is that a fun time? I have questions.
You have questions. Yeah. So tarot cards date back to the 15th century, where they were used in various parts of Europe to play card games. The earliest references date to the 1440s and 1450s and the region of the northern cities of Milan, Venice, Florence, and Urbino. According to a 2016 article posted by Tim Husband, curator, Department of Medieval Art and the Cloister at the Met Museum, the complicated nature of the tarot card game points to origins of the game being decades older. Tarot is a trick-taking game, and the rules have not changed significantly since the 15th century. So tarot is a game, just not the game I used for the story. According to Wikipedia, it was in the late 18th century that tarot gained its association with fortune-telling, thanks to... Boy, I'm glad that I decided to stop being able to talk now. Thanks to French occultists. Unsubstantiated claims began being made about the meaning of the cards, and these cards began with Antoine Court and Jean-Baptiste Alliette in Paris. Alliette, who also went by the name boy, this is French. I'm not very good at French.
Italia.
No.
Echilglu.
Stop it. We'll call it Italia, even though that's wrong. Jean-Baptiste is credited with first creating an adapted version of tarot cards specifically for the occult, and that was around 1789. Modern derivatives of these decks are now the only ones available in English-speaking countries. So apparently in Italy and France you can still buy tarot cards for the game tarot. But here in the States and other English-speaking countries, the only tarot cards you find are the ones meant for fortune telling. There is a whole lot to learn about both types of tarot cards. Links are in the show notes to both the Met Museum as well as Wikipedia, so you can dive down your own rabbit hole. I spent a lot of time down there. Little bit about me. Like you, I'm not one thing. I'm a writer, an engineer, a wife, and a mother. What's first on the list depends on the day. Beyond the title I claim, I'm a person who loves learning and thoroughly enjoys a good puzzle. I'm creative and I get bored nearly as quickly as Jack does. I hold a BS in Civil Engineering from Case Western Reserve University and an MS in Civil Engineering from Cleveland State University, which gives me absolutely no background in writing, but I do it anyway. Mystery writing and engineering isn't as difficult or isn't as different as you think they are. Both require logic and process to get from the start to the solution. A big shout out to Ed Teja, who edited this for me and helped me make the story better. I was very sad to find out that I made it too obvious, so even as Jack was going through the deliberation, I was like, oh, I should have made it even harder. But thank you, Ed. You made Mystic awesome, and thank you for making my bad guys badder. That wraps up this episode of Mysteries to Die For. Please do support our show by subscribing, telling a mystery lover about us, and giving us a 5-star review. Check out our website, tgwolff.com/podcast, for links to this season's authors. Mysteries to Die For is created and hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. A Tarotfying End was written by me, TG Wolff. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, that first chapter from a fresh release in a mystery, crime, or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story, An International Twisted Mystery by Jason Little, where Twister cards are the featured game. And this may be our first mystery in the horror subgenre. It's a very cool story. Plan on being back with us. With that, I'll turn it over to Jack. The floor is yours. Take us out.